Radio check. Loud and clear.
KSL Sports and KSL Podcast present Mode Push, an American view of F1, starting now.
Don't stop. This is what you get with this Odyssey.
I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted.
I enjoyed this so much. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, everybody, welcome on in. It's another episode, a much anticipated episode of Mode Push, an American view of F1. Alex Kirry, Dan Jimenez, always here with you. Thanks for being with us on the program. And listen, if you're an F1 fan, what a time to be an F1 fan. Dan, we're F1 fans, and things just keep getting more fun and more wild for us. It's been a minute since we've been able to chat. We haven't been able to do a Monaco kind of revisit. We'll be able to do that, but there's so much more other stuff that's wild to have to recap, and we've also got the insane weather at the Canadian GP already as free practices are fired up as we're talking right now. So as you get your weekend started, welcome back to F1, Dan. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, glad to be back. It's a spicy time in F1 and just so much to talk about. Where do we start?
Well, let's start first with Monaco and the idea that maybe there is way more going on at the front of the field than we anticipated. I think we're all excited. I've never been, you know me, I don't have a team. I like competitiveness, though. And so it's weird to have such a gap between the front and the 2, 3, 4s, and then the middle of the field, and then, of course, the back marking teams, whatever. But now with McLaren looking absolutely sharp, and maybe if not, maybe they're the fastest, and maybe not even Lando's the fastest. Maybe it's Oscar Piastri. I mean, what a freaking team Zach Brown has put together. But Ferrari has also fired it up, and Charles LeClerc answering the call of not embarrassing himself by letting Carlos Sainz take over the storylines for the Tifosi. But Ferrari's back. McLaren is definitely right there, and Red Bull are still kind of obviously going to be at the front of everything. But your thoughts on a Monaco that ended with Charles Leclerc? I don't know if you know this. He's from Monaco. I don't know if we heard that enough this weekend, this past weekend. So, yeah, I'm excited that there's some competitiveness, and your Scuderia is coming around, man.
Dude, it was an emotional weekend, especially for anyone who was either a public or a closet Ferrari fan. It was also like an interesting weekend in that, like, you know, the first race in maybe the modern F1 era, or maybe in all of F1 history, where the top 10 didn't change places. So on the one hand, wasn't an exciting race. On the other hand, it was a super exciting race. It just kind of depended on how much you were into the Charles story arc. So it was really cool to see Charles win. All the stuff afterwards, him and Freddie Vasseur jumping into the harbor there. It was just really neat to see, and glad to see Charles get that, monkey off his back. Like, we have 2 curses broken so far this year. The Lando winless curse is broken, and the Charles, bad luck at Monaco curse is broken. And like that, it's setting up for a very interesting rest of the season. People are saying the title fight on the constructor side is back on, because Red Bull is clearly not comfortable with, leading with the level of comfort that they have for the last year and a half, 2 years. And especially at these short tracks that are really bumpy. I think when there's when it's not like a super well or the super smooth surface, and there's bumps and there's right height changes, and you have to run the car higher because you're having to go over curbs and such. I think that's when the advantage that Red Bull just falls off, and it brings those other 2 teams more into play, and they even seem to have an advantage there. But we'll go this weekend at Canada, and I think that McLaren's the favorite. So, I mean, it really is, I think, just shaping up to be a super competitive, like, mid-season for sure.
I was watching something that talked about how, like, hey, yeah, McLaren's is set up pretty well for this racetrack in Canada. The real test, they say, is going to be in Spain, like where Red Bull, it's going to be a track that, looks like it's quote unquote a setup that's perfect for them, a runaway win possibly for them. And so where is everybody else compared to that? And between people trying to figure out the slow speeds corners versus the medium speed, I some of that stuff I'm like, man, I good luck. I don't know how you're going to figure all that stuff out, because on top of the car and the engineering stuff, it's all going to have to change again for 2026, and we're going to dedicate a full episode of what those regulation changes look like. I don't know if you saw the mock-up of what the 2026 car looks like, but if it's going to make everything competitive, that's where we want it. That's where we want it to be. And now what has to get figured out is that driver's market. And so from an actual running standpoint, so the standings in F1 look like this. There is obviously a clear front end. I need to remind people that as much as everything sounds really fun, we've had 4 separate winners in F1 this year, which we could not say last year. 5 out of the 8 wins have still gone to Max Verstappen. So if you want to know if the dominance is still there, at the very least, you have to respect the fact that he's still winning the championship by 30-plus points. But Charles is right there. Lando is in the triple digits. We have between Sergio Perez, bless his heart. Can you say that? And I mean, bless his heart, he got a brand new freaking contract. So there you go. But you've got you've got 60 points, 62 points to separate the 5 top runners. And then even that, you have a lot of guys scoring a lot of points already. Even Lance Stroll's in the double digits of points scoring. It's a weird time for everybody else to look at what the rest of the field is and to think, wow, we might have a little bit of a shot here. And with the weird weather this weekend in Canada, you could also have a wild finish there. So everything's on the table, but Max Verstappen, as it stands, is still head and shoulders above everybody else. And from a team standpoint, that's where it's even more close. 24 points separating Red Bull and Ferrari. That's where the real fight is. Can McLaren kind of bring it in and get even closer to Ferrari? I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a really, really competitive time in F1 compared to what it was the last couple of years. And that's, I think, good news for everybody, especially people who are getting into the sport brand new, right?
Yeah, and it's super exciting in that respect. I look at the constructor standings, and I think about, like, in the last, seems so far in this season that Max has been fighting off Ferrari and McLaren like by himself. Sergio's 5th in the standings, and has not had very good weekends the last few races. And like last year, that was fine.
Right.
Max was running away with it and nobody was really catching him or even winning races. But this year, they're absolutely going to need Sergio's contribution, and he needs to be getting consistent podiums, because if he doesn't, like, you get a McLaren 2-3 versus a Max finishing first, like, there's going to be gaining ground on Red Bull in the constructor standings if they don't have Sergio's help. And man, last week, or not, Monaco, the wreck was not his fault. That was 100% on Kevin Magnussen making a stupid decision, but he did qualify in the back, and that's on him too. Like, you don't get out of Q1 in Monaco, you are going to face trouble.
Yes.
And that's just kind of the formula and what happened. And so it's the incident directly not his fault, but he needs to be qualifying better and be fighting for podiums for sure.
So let's take a look at what the driver lineups look like, because you talk about drama for 2025. Let me list off it's actually probably more beneficial for us to list off all of the openings versus all the guys that are already on teams. There are, I didn't even look, but there's one Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin. Those are your only teams that both drivers are already locked up. And so now you're looking at TBA on Haas for both seats. Sauber with Nico Hülkenberg, there's an open seat there, obviously. RB Visa credit card 2.0 is no technically locked up seats there either. No one's confirmed, right? Alex Albon is the only Williams driver right now, and I think the rumors that surround Carlos Sainz making a move is pretty crazy to think that. James Vowles, by the way, I'm liking this dude. I mean, the only problem right now is the Mercedes power unit might not be there yet. But I think that everybody's kind of excited about what's going on in 2026. At least you have hope that engine for 2026 might be coming around. Alpine, no driver confirmed yet for them. Obviously, the news of Esteban Ocon not being renewed and walking away from Alpine for next season. We don't know what his seat looks like. I'm not sure what any of these look like. What are the possibilities right now that you only have? And by the way, when you look at these driver lineups, I get it. Sergio Perez, was that a shock to you that he got signed first of all, or re-upped with Red Bull this week?
It was a shock. I thought someone was trolling me when I first heard it. Especially after the last couple of weeks, they have a lot more data than just a couple of weeks to go off of. But man, with the constructors title being such a tight fight, I mean, maybe when Sergio Perez wasn't an option, they looked around, when Carlos Sainz wasn't an option, they looked around at the rest of the available drivers and thought, well, let's just stick with Sergio.
He's our fourth or fifth.
He's the devil, we know.
Yeah, he's our fourth best pick that we could get, but he's the only one available right now, I guess. And
because you're not going to sign Ocon over him.
No,
you're not any of these other guys we've talked about. I don't think so. Sergio's a top 10 driver, and so if Carlos isn't available, then you go Sergio. So, but for 2 years is maybe the aspect that I thought was interesting. I thought they do a 1-year deal and then wait for see what unveils or kind of what opportunities roll out in 2026. But good for Sergio, and puts that topic to bed. But man, the Carlos to Williams thing, what a freaking glow up for Williams to go from Logan Sargent to Carlos Sainz. Like, way to go, James. Like, if he can sign that deal, that's incredible.
Well, the rumors are that there is a deal in place, and obviously it's between Audi and Williams. I would have thought it would be a slam freaking dunk that Audi would be the choice for him, and obviously, walking in and maybe, I mean, I don't know. Like, why wouldn't a deal like that get done? If is it because you're going to be on a team that's going to be struggling for a while versus a team that's already gone through the struggles and is on kind of an upside and has maybe a higher ceiling, at least for the short term?
Yeah, that's probably it, with maybe an eye on the Mercedes seat. I don't know why Carlos to Mercedes didn't pan out. Maybe they're just so in on Antonelli and getting young talent.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So, but an eye on the Williams seat, I think or on the Mercedes seat, I think if you're a Williams driver, that's what you're always trying to play for. It's just a crazy market. I'm thinking about what happens to Esteban Ocon. Does he drive next year? Or, next year, does he have a seat? If anywhere, it's probably Haas. I don't think he goes to Sauber Audi. With Nico Hülkenberg, I got to feel like they got to get somebody else other than Esteban. So
I know that
I think
Esteban
Haas is his only chance.
Yeah, I know Esteban Ocon is kind of an interesting figure because he's a likable guy from everybody who talks about it. They're like, lovely man. And then he gets on the track and he makes weird decisions. And he becomes a little bit of this villain for no reason in my mind, I guess. I don't know. Like, and Pierre Gasly obviously sort of paints the picture, I think, of maybe a little bit more than what it is. But Esteban Ocon has been an interesting guy in the sport, and walking away from a team, and maybe it was mutual, but it kind of sounds like he's like, I'm fed up, but like, he's a French dude and this is a French team and he's got a French teammate and none of it's worked out.
None of it worked. Too much French going on in that team. They got to mix it. They need some diversity.
I don't know.
They're all too similar.
I have no idea what to think. I mean,
that couldn't have been a mutual decision.
No. And is Pierre, like, is he got is it a slam dunk that he's back at Alpine? Has he seen enough development? Like, he has a little bit of the cards in his, side of the table to be able to negotiate, I guess. But where would he end up? Is he looking and going, Sauber's going to want me? I mean, are there a lot of guys standing around going, hey man, Sauber's probably going to come after me. I talked to him a little bit and I think it went really well. Where does Yuki end up? Like, is it a slam dunk? He's going to get confirmed. He's not satisfied with anything. I think he was incensed to think that he wasn't going to be the guy who got the seat at Red Bull and Sergio struggled. I mean, and he's been making strides this year. He's been really good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he's been awesome. And I think in a weird way, I could see Yuki going to Alpine as a step up. Like, he kind of gets out of this like ceiling at Red Bull of, well, now you have Sergio and Max on long-term contracts. Like, you're not going anywhere other than here. But if he, going to Alpine and being teamed up like the dream team of Yuki and Pierre again, just like those guys get along super well, he could be an interesting pairing, I think, to go along Pierre on that team. But I hope Yuki lands somewhere, that gives him the potential to actually compete for podiums, because I think he's showing that he has the talent for it. And I think like with this silly season stuff every year, there's a lot of playing of musical chairs, but in the end, you think who isn't going to be driving next season that is, and then therefore who are the new drivers that are coming in? Like what's the net change? And I think Logan Sargent is cooked.
What?
And I think he's cooked. I don't think he's coming back. And
there's no way, right? Like that's the one that we're looking at. We're going, where's he going to end up? Is he going to maybe end up in a hot seat? It's like, no, absolutely not. He had a shot, and
he's going to end up next to Danica Patrick doing the GP,
the US
the Miami
GP,
GP commentary.
Yes.
And he's cooked, and I think Magnussen's cooked, and so I think that's 2 drivers out, 2 drivers in, probably Ollie Behrman. I'm guessing he goes to Haas. And then Antonelli to Mercedes.
Ollie Behrman's the Ferrari Academy.
Ferrari, yeah.
Scored points this year when Carlos had appendicitis, if people are forgetting, because it was he was the most famous person that entire weekend, and then we didn't hear a word about him afterward. And everybody saw him go back to school or whatever and be like, yeah, he's a hero. But guys who I'm surprised who won't be back, who could possibly not be back. Ocon is like a legit, like he is a race winner in F1 with multiple podiums, and some of those have come on the back of getting some help, right, with the weather and just great circumstances, whatever, fine. But he's a race winner. So is Pierre Gasly. Like Yuki Tsunoda, you can't just like forget and say, no, we're kind of done developing him. And I think Marco likes him, right? Marco Helmut kind of likes Yuki. I mean, he'll hate you in 2 seconds too, but for some reason he feels like he's a Red Bull guy. I don't think Daniel Ricciardo's going to be back in the sport ever again. After you get multiple tries, like congrats, but that time has passed, and even though you have a race win in relative recent history, like that was also a little bit of a fluke. So I don't know. There's a lot there. And I do like the young guys. I like Ollie Behrman. I have no idea what to expect with Kimi Antonelli, but, God bless Mercedes to try to figure it out because he's, a giant question mark. But all of this being said, this is what the world of F1 looks like, by the way, most seasons. But when you have a regulation change and new teams coming in, it makes it even more crazy. And I think that's what's made for the off-track stuff to be just as interesting this time of year as anything else. We haven't even hit silly season technically.
Yeah, I think the 2026 regulations is this like maybe glimmer of hope for any driver who thinks like, if I can just hold on in this to a seat in this sport till 2026, then there's another roll of the dice. Maybe my team gets it right coming out of the gate. We have an advantage, or maybe the regulations put it more into the driver's hands, and I can, prove myself. I think every driver thinks that in equal equipment that they'd perform better than maybe that they do, except for maybe Max. But so I think everyone's just like, man, can I just hold on one more season, and in 2026 I'm going to have another shot at this to maybe improve my standing inside of the sport. And it's pretty wild right now. And I think that where Carlos goes is the big domino to fall. And once I think that's set, then I think other things will, because I think he's like essentially the biggest free agent name out there. And I think once that free agent gets landed, then everything else will just fall into place quick.
The rest of the season, does Max run away with everything kind of overall? Are you going to see it go that because as it is right now, he's winning whatever it is, 80% of the races so far this year. Does it get to be more like hey, he wins 2/3 of the races still the rest of the way, and a third of them are going to get split up between 2 or 3 guys? Does it go like this the rest of the way? Have updates been figured out enough with these teams to be able to make it this year even more competitive in the championship race?
I mean, my gut says, yeah, like 2/3 of the races are probably Max's, just with the way that the Red Bull is, where its advantages are and on the type of tracks that we have left remaining. But man, also there does seem to be something weird happening at Red Bull. I don't know. There's something in the air that feels like they're not like that they're playing defense, but they're just, I don't know. I think that there is maybe more performance deficit or a elimination of the performance advantage that they've had over McLaren and Ferrari than we've yet to realize. I think it was easy to say Monaco, Charles won Monaco cleanly. Max never would have had a chance from sixth place. But so that doesn't really give us a good read of how close they are. But I mean, the Imola to me was the biggest wow. Things are different now because Lando was able to catch Max without any weirdness going on. It was just a straight up race and he was catching Max. And so it's just, we hadn't seen that for 3 years. And so I think that Imola to me gives me hope that even at a place like Spain, for instance, it's going to be a really close race.
Who's more annoying in F1? Is it Zach Brown? I like Zach Brown, and he's one of the few Americans involved in the sport at the high level, right? But man, him getting the tattoo this last week of Lando's win and in Miami, and just that whole situation to me is a bit annoying. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out. On a weekend like this, I do pray for the rain in a weekend like this. And they had hail today, I think. Do you get insurance hail damage on F1 cars if it dings the carbon fiber?
Yeah, exactly. I hope they were in the garage. Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, I could see if I wasn't an American, I probably would be pretty bugged by Zach Brown.
just Trump in the garage. A month ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
and also if you're going to get a tattoo, I don't care, get a tattoo. But of the Miami GP circuit that is unlikely to remain on the calendar forever,
it
but
looks
this is going to be on your body forever.
I know. It looks like Lando did the tattoo in prison for him with one of those mocked up pens.
Yeah.
It's like prison blue. It's bad lines. It doesn't really, you're looking at it and it just says 55, 20, 24 on it. And you're like, okay. Or what does it say? I don't know. It had something along those lines. No, 55 is Carlos Sainz. What number is Lando? He's 3, right?
He's 4.
4. Then why does it say
4,
55? What is it? I don't even know what it says on it. I'm looking at it right now.
I didn't see a close up. I just saw the
I'm trying to see what it is.
Of him getting it mid tattoo.
Yeah. No,
But
I can't tell what it says.
There's got to be so many other ways. Get the car, get something else on it. But the outline of the Miami circuit is the worst tattoo to get.
Yeah, really dumb. But you know what? It's fine. And you're like, oh, he's the technical director, right? No, just CEO with his hands way. He's the Jerry Jones of, well, no, not Jerry Jones because Jerry Jones is the owner. But he's the guy with his hands way too far in it just micromanaging from the top, sitting there on the pit wall while you're, while your technical director is trying to figure things out and you're over there meddling and getting tattoos, fine. Yeah, I could see how
Zach Brown's the kind of guy that how when they, a team wins the Super Bowl, then some random old dude in a suit gets the trophy first and you're like, who is this? Why are we not talking to the coach or the players? Zach, I think, is the kind of guy that's I'm going to get to the microphone first and start, speaking for this organization when you're like, we just want to hear from the driver.
Well, I'm interested to see how the rest of free practices go before this one. All right, so this one is set up a little bit more racetrack wise. Historically, I'm looking at past winners, and on the grid, there's 4 former winners of this very Grand Prix, including Daniel Ricciardo, probably the least likely to do anything this weekend, but he was still a former race winner. Everybody has seemed to have scored points at this track except for the 2 guys from McLaren. They're the only 2 on the grid that doesn't have a team that has scored a point or 2 at this race historically, and that might change this weekend because their car is dialed up, it seems like right now.
Yeah. Canada it's a low downforce track. It's shaped like kind of like a paperclip with hairpin turns on each end, and so that's why I'd say it's not really a Red Bull track. Red Bull likes big, long, sweeping corners, high downforce stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, Lando led first practice, and with the rain, who knows? And I think that's been a lot of the history of Canada, as the weather is an unknown factor, and commonly, it rains and throws the strategy off. And so, I love Canada. It's one of my favorite races to watch, and I'd love to go see it someday. I think it's probably my next track that I want to go to after Las Vegas, of course.
I was gonna say, come on, man, you're an Elvis impersonator by night. This should be your should be your race, man.
Yeah. No, I love Canada. There's not a lot of tire wear because of that. It's just go fast, brake, not a lot of lateral G. So Yeah, I'm looking forward to this weekend because I mean, if Friday, today's been any indication, it's going to be a wet weekend. And who's great in the wet? I think Lando's good in the wet.
Yeah.
So I'd probably say my money's on Lando this weekend.
Okay, I like it. So we'll start there with your podium. By the way, Lateral G, very underrated MC nickname. Or if you're a rapper, if your name is Lateral G, you will be worshipped by the F1 community. All right, your podium and then your surprise podium. Give me 2 podiums this week. The one that you think's going to happen. Obviously, you have Lando at the top of the steps. Possibly if it is wet out there, but I think that even if it's not, he could still also be at the top there.
Yeah. Wet or dry, I think it's going to be Lando, Max, Carlos.
Okay,
we'll go with that, and then the surprise podium. Let's go with a Alonso, Stroll, George.
George.
Yeah,
All right.
Russell.
All right. Here's my normal podium. I'm going to go McLaren 1-2, but it's going to be Piastri, Norris.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to see Max's Red Bull on that third place podium, or that third place spot on the podium. My surprise podium would be, ready for this? He gets all sorts of inspired this week with his new contract. Checo won because Max has either engine issues or just gets unlucky with pitting or something like that, something along those lines. I'll go Checo. I'm gonna go full Spanish-speaking podium. Nice. Checo, Sainz, Alonso.
Okay, I like that.
That's my odd
appropriate for Canada.
That's my odd podium, but those guys have all done well at that track in the past before. Obviously, Alonso is a former world champion, has won there before a couple of times. But those are my wishes, and frankly, I would love to see that McLaren 1-2, but I don't know. I think they're just a little shy still. I think they're this close, but it's not necessarily right there for them yet. Still, so
I do think Oscar wins a race this season. I think that is high chance.
Like what? I mean, that's wins. The thing is he's now the unlucky one, right? He's won. I think his only win is a sprint race, and nobody looks at that and goes, "Oh, you're an F1 winner." No, they don't say you're not a Grand Prix winner though. So that's the difference
yet.
Now that his teammate has gotten that monkey off of his back. Now Oscar Piastri is kind of the guy who has been, frankly, in some of these weekends racing better than his teammate, and that's why I think the future of we've overlooked Oscar Piastri totally. Like his development has been absolutely blazingly quick. Like he has just figured it out. And of course, everybody looks at Lando first on that team, but I think that McLaren knows something that we don't, and I think signing up those guys long term is a big deal. So I'm if there's a team right now that I've been pulling for because they were so bad last year and just with massive question marks, it's McLaren.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Oscar is set to maybe even be better than I think he's just. Career-wise, he's been shot out of cannon. I think he's performing better than Lando did early in his career, maybe in better equipment. But yeah, I'm with you.
Well, I don't know if we have anything else for this week, Dan. I know we're going to jump into 2026 as of next week and just kind of really figure things out. But other than that, we've got a race to get to. We're FPs.
We got a race to watch.
We got free practices right now, and then qualifying is going to be, according to the weather, wet, and then a possible wet Grand Prix as well. So looking forward to it this weekend, and then we're going to break it all down and the 2026 regulations next week. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. For Dan Jimenez, I'm Alex Kirry. We'll be back at it again next week. Tell your friends about F1 and teach them about the sport that is the fastest growing, at least television audience-wise, here in the United States. All right. We'll be back next week. For Dan, I'm Alex. See you then, everybody.